The Miami Dolphins had an impressive season in many accounts. I mean, you look at their new head coach and everything that they've done there, but it was also quite a broken season on a lot of accounts. Tua, he only played 12 full games, but when he did play, he was great. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, it's hard not to love what he was doing on the field. You know, from an EPA per drop back perspective, he was streaks ahead of pretty much everyone whenever he was on the field. This offense was phenomenal when Tua was at the helm, but you know this is a serious concern. We talk about concussions. You know, it is such a massive hot topic at the moment because this is now Tua's third concussion in what 2.5 months. We're potentially getting career-ending season. I don't think we're at that. I'd be certainly shocked to see the Dolphins not give Tua the opportunity to be starting quarterback next year, but it's certainly something we've got to have in our minds.
Yeah, and expanding on that, like we're going into Tua's third off season, and that's when quarterbacks are eligible for new deals, or players who are first round picks, and it just feels very much like he'd be in a very tricky position if he tried to go to the table right now. Do you think he'd be better off waiting a while? We're going to see Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert likely get paid quite large amounts this offseason. Lamar Jackson might even sign a new contract. But what do you think a contract would look like for Tua if he did want paying right now?
I think that if Tua wants paying, that would almost sound alarm bells to me if I was the Miami Dolphins, because the only reason Tua would want paying now is if he's thinking, I've not got much left of my career and I need to get a payday. I think if he was to sign a contract now, it would be what would be the old Andy Dalton contract, where it would probably be about 35, 40 million a year, maybe guarantees for the first 2 years, but nothing else beyond that. And I think Tua is probably looking at that 50 million mark and saying that's where I want to be. And I think that, yeah, if he can put a whole healthy season together next year, if he can continue playing the way he did this year when he was on the field, that's the level of kind of money he's going to be able to warrant. But I think at the moment, the Dolphins can't invest 50 million, 3-4 years guaranteed, because we've got a massive concern over his health and he's not showing an ability to be on the field week in, week out at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, he was throwing the ball for 8.9 yards per attempt, which led all starters. He was second in DVOA and QBR, according to Football Outsiders. So his play really was incredible, to the point which a lot of people were caught by surprise by just how good the skill position players were around him, and particularly Tyreek Hill. I mean, he's had an incredible season. Did you see it coming?
Tyreek Hill's an incredible talent. It's hard not to see coming. I'm not sure I quite saw this level coming. You know, he had 32% targets per route. Like that's unbelievable. I didn't expect him to be commanding a 30+% target share in this offense. So yeah, he had a better season than I thought he would have. I think halfway through the season, the pace he was on, everyone kept talking about, 2,000 plus receiving yards. Obviously, that drifted away slightly as Tua started to get injured and this offense started to falter a bit. But look, Tyreek Hill, from an asset perspective, I think you guaranteed probably one more year of high production. But speed receivers, as they start to hit that age 30 mark, I start to get concerned. From a dynasty perspective, I'd be looking to cash out right now.
I mean, he's just had a career high 170 targets, 1,687 yards. So I can see why some people would be saying, I would rather take the discount because Tyreek is cheaper to acquire in Dynasty than Jalen Waddle. Whereas in best ball next season, I think you can solidify Tyreek Hill as a fringe back end of round one player. I really expect Jalen Waddle will probably be around late round 2, early round 3 at best, because he did have more down weeks. How are you approaching Jalen Waddle at the moment?
I think that Jalen Waddle is accurately priced. I think that but just because Tyreek's there, it's hard to see 170 target season, like you said, with Tyreek. I think that the ceiling is immediately capped. I think he's an incredible talent. I think he's going to be, put up some fantastic fancy points. He was the wide receiver 13 in points per game this year. But I just don't think that truly elite ceiling is ever going to be realized whilst Tyreek is sitting in that same offense.
Yeah, and the true eliteness of them, I think in one way, one stat that stands out to me, there were 7 weeks where both were top 20 wide receivers. And particularly looking at things from my perspective in best ball, that's incredible. Like if you had the Tua, Tyreek, and Jalen Waddle stack last year, which was really attainable, it was very easy to draft it. Then you were going through to the best ball playoffs. You just needed quarterback depth for when things went wrong with Tua. Moving on to the running back, we've got both Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson are out of contract this offseason. What do you see the Dolphins doing there? Because it feels like the kind of position where they could re-sign one of them, maybe even two of them. We know Mike McDaniel loves them. Or do you think they go out and take a swing because it's such an obvious place to upgrade?
I feel like, look, we've seen with the Shanahan offense, it can get production out of basically no names. And look, Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson have been fantastic from an NFL perspective, but they are no names. And they've both been great this year. I think Raheem Mostert's probably going to, he's getting up there. I think he's 32, 33, something like that. He's probably retiring at the end of the year. I think Jeff Wilson, they spent draft capital to go out and trade for him mid-season. I would be shocked if he wasn't kept around beyond this season. I don't think you spend, I think it was a 5th or 6th round pick in a trade if it's not a guy that, you're potentially looking at more than just an 8-week rental. So I think Jeff Wilson will be around next year. I think there's definitely going to be another player added, whether that's somebody, day 2, day 3 of the draft, whether they go out. Look, this is an incredible free agent running back class. Maybe they spend some money and bring somebody in. But let's not get away from this offense is going to be built around Tua and those 2 wide receivers. I think whoever the running back is going to have some fantastic fantasy production, but the offense is never going to run through them. So I don't think we're going to see, whether it's a Saquon or someone like that in free agency, go out and spend the big money on, because I think the running back is always going to be a complementary piece of this offense rather than the centerpiece.
Yeah, and one player who's probably moving on as well is Mike Gesicki. Everyone who was paying attention knew that Mike Gesicki wasn't going to repeat kind of how he played last year. They franchise tagged him, and his current value is really minimal in Dynasty. You're talking a 3rd round pick because he's had an awful season. But do you see there being good landing spots for Mike Gesicki if he moves on? And if he does move on, is there anyone in the Dolphins tight end room who's worth rostering?
I think there's absolutely some interesting landing spots, but it's going to be about how the team acquiring view him. And I think if you're expecting Mike Gesicki to come in and be a tight end, I think you're going to be sorely mistaken. I think Mike Gesicki, let's call him what he is. He's a big slot receiver, and that's all he is. And I think that if a team is acquiring him and saying, right, you're going to line up in the slot 80 to 90% of the time, you're going to be running routes, we're not going to ask you to block at all, then I think he could be fantastic for fantasy. I think he could be one of these guys that could have sneaky value in Dynasty, in best ball, because he's going to get forgotten about after a down year. If a team is acquiring him and saying, right, you're now going to be our, wide tight end, you're going to block, you're going to stay in, you're going to be doing all of this, I think that he's going to have a similar season to this year where, he might have the odd flash week where he catches a touchdown, but he is definitely not going to be a reliable plug-and-play fantasy option.